your biggest threat is doing nothing, right? If you just kind of continue and you've been around for 125 years, you'll probably be around for another 125 years.
The Digital Banking Podcast is powered by Typhon.
Thank you so much for listening to and watching the Digital Banking Podcast. If you enjoy our episodes, please follow us on your favorite podcast platforms. And if you're willing, we would love if you'd take a minute to write us a review. Thank you so much for being a part of the journey that is the Digital Banking Podcast. One thing you'll never hear on this podcast, sales pitches. Except this one, Java for Kids coffee. Every bag purchased sends $5 to the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. So now your morning or afternoon cup can make a real difference. Check out javaforkids.org for more. Welcome to another episode of the Digital Banking Podcast. My guest today is Corey Wrinn, Managing Director of Rivel Banking Research. There's an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I had the privilege of meeting Corey for the first time in person a few months ago. And what immediately stuck out to me from that very first meeting was that Corey genuinely cared about the nuance of how do we find what matters most in life, but as it relates to how it impacts those around us. For one, there's a lot of times more than one way to go about answering a question. And there's more than one way to go about living our lives. And many times, that question, there's more than one right answer to it. So how do you decide, in this instance, what matters most? And did you take into account more than just yourself in how you tried to answer that question? Corey enjoys the complexities and challenges in life. He likes to take a very data-driven and analytical approach to breaking them down and deciding where to go next. Everything from what are we going to have for dinner to if I make this career change, could it influence where we may want or have to live? And what could that mean for my kids' future? You see, his wife is an education administrator, and they actually live feet from campus. Corey said that the combination of his style and his wife's style really helps keep their family in balance by allowing them to think intelligently about being a cohesive unit. And these lessons influence how he thinks about work and the community banking space. Just like in our personal lives, we have a very serious role when it comes to being shepherds of our account holders' hard-earned money. How can we take that seriously, but still have fun, still take chances, and still recognize there may be more than one way to meet our shared definition of success? Look, friends, life is complex. Let's break it down. Let's be intentional and thoughtful, and let's enjoy the experience, but together. So Corey, welcome to the show, sir.
Josh, thanks for having me. Not the intro I thought I'd have for a digital banking podcast, but enjoyable nonetheless. Good to be here.
What's funny, man, I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. My only regret with this podcast is knowing where it has gone from where it started. I think I would have named it something different, but now, 150 episodes in, it kind of is what it is.
Your AI discoverability score is probably pretty high because the title of your podcast describes perfectly what you do. So I think that is a benefit.
It's funny, though, when you were talking about how you think about life and I was writing up your introduction.
Yeah.
And you were like, life is just full of decisions. Everything from like, what's for dinner? Yeah. Man, I was laughing internally because that is like the most existential question of our existence.
Yeah.
And like my wife and I have this running joke that getting married is just trying to figure out what's for dinner with another person for the rest of your life.
And I would say 6 out of 7 days, I'm absolutely terrified of dinner because we have options and there's 4 of us here. And rarely do we all want the same thing, but we want to try to make the same thing because we're not insane. Last Friday, Friday afternoon, I took my youngest daughter and we went to the grocery store. We bought a lot of stuff and came home. And the first question was like, what are we having for dinner? It's like, we just went to the grocery store. We have all these options. Didn't make it any easier.
No.
No.
But it's funny. That is such a great analogy of life though, right?
Yeah.
And it is interesting. And I really appreciate, this is one of the things I love probably the most about hosting this podcast is I get to talk to people that just, I would love to actually like be able to interview myself from before the first episode to today.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to think that it's actually influenced me a ton. And it's changed a lot of how I think because I get to talk to people like you and you just give me new perspectives and new ways of thinking about things. And literally your comment about like life is full of all these different choices. The question is, in this sense, did you take more into account than just yourself? Right. And I thought that was just a really intentional way of putting it. And going back to the whole, like, what's for dinner, it made me think of, the whole, like, Steve Jobs always wore the same turtleneck, like less decisions in a day. Yeah. I have had the exact same thing for lunch every single day for probably close to 10 years, Corey. Why? Because I'm in my office like 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm in here. I'm doing my thing. I'm working. My wife and kids, they're doing their thing, right? Lunch is just about me. And it is simply for me. I've just resigned it to, it's all about operational efficiency. I have like 5 minutes to make something. I don't want to think about my options. Like, here's what I need for lunch. I know I've always got the same set of groceries that I need to buy. Like, it just streamlines the whole operation. But it's super simple, right? Because it impacts nobody but me. But then dinner comes around and it's like,
for anybody listening, take it for what it's worth. We're both here wearing our black company polos. So I don't know that it shows that we're like exactly on the forefront of decision making here. But I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, right? And every day you have to make a lot of decisions. If you can eliminate a couple of those, does it make your life easier? If the answer is yes, then go for it, right? Like, not everything needs to be a challenge. I like challenges in some capacities because I think it's fun to solve the problem and come up with the right kind of solution and maybe a couple different options. But narrowing down the list of options is probably always step one. Food included.
Yeah. No, and again, like I said, I mean, it's funny that I'd like to think that I'm a good enough human that, like, in the back of my head, subconsciously, I thought about this stuff. But it was just cool the way you said it very, very bluntly was, and it did. It was like, hey, lunch doesn't impact anybody else, but dinner does. Like, dinner does impact the kids and it impacts my wife. And you're right. Like, if one of us wants tacos, one of us wants burgers, one of us wants we have to take that into consideration. How does my decision impact others? And as a parent to youngish children like me, that actually the correct answer is what is going to be the highest probability that they actually eat.
Yeah. At a certain point, you just say, what can they eat the most of? Like, get the calories in your body. Because, like today in New York, it's 90 degrees. They're running around. They're probably sweating. They're hot. They're hungry. And they're going to come home and say they're not hungry. And I know that's not true. It's inevitable.
But it's not true.
Yeah.
So you want to know an incredibly real example of this from literally this morning, dude? I get up. My wife gets up at the same time. She does her workout. I come in and start work. So I've been on calls. The kids woke up while I was on calls. So when I finally got a break, I came out and said, good morning. They're sitting at the island in the kitchen. And a couple of days ago was my son's 5th birthday. And I come into the kitchen and my daughter goes, I've got cake. And she's literally just got a fistful of birthday cake that she's shoving in her mouth. It's like 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And I just start laughing. And my wife looks at me and she's like, look, this was just not the fight I wanted this morning. Nope. She's like, they needed calories. They didn't want to eat. I didn't want to deal with them being spicy later because they were hungry. They ate cake.
Yeah.
And I just started laughing. I was like, what else can you do, man? Like, I fully support this decision, babe.
It's all right. It's all right.
Let them eat cake.
Yeah.
I think there's a whole thing with that, right?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, kind of along the lines of, what's cool about the challenges in life, right? Is it also, like you were saying, you get to decide, is this something that's worth the challenge? Trying to get the kids to eat, broccoli versus screw it, just let them eat cake. What's worth fighting over? What's the challenge that's going to have the biggest reward attached to it? And it's also interesting, you kind of gave the example of having that unbridled mind of a child. And you kind of couple those two things together. And the other thing I thought you said that was pretty interesting leading into this was like one of the things that you love is when your kids want to do something that you've never done before. And it kind of almost flips the script and challenges you. And you were saying that your daughter wants to play an instrument. And you were like, I've never played an instrument. So now I get a new challenge. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, she's 4, right? So she's in pre-K. She has like 13 other friends there, and they're all her friends, and they all get along. And she came home one day. She's like, I want to start playing music. I said, great. What do you want to play? She said, I don't know. I was like, well, where do you want to start? I don't know. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know where to start either, right? It's like, as much as I probably wanted to play an instrument, I just never got around to it. It was one of those things. It was just, I was busy doing other stuff. Now I'm seeing this as a great opportunity to learn maybe with her, as long as she picks like kind of a fun, cool, not too loud instrument. Then I support her either way. But I think it's an interesting way when you come into parenthood, when you're thinking about like, you need to teach your kids all this stuff, and then it ends up flipping the script and they teach you, right? Mm-hmm. That's so cliche, but it's true. It's like they just have this view on life that is so kind of simplified. And it makes you realize we overcomplicate a lot of our decision making and just how we kind of approach things. And I love the idea of, she says, I just want to play an instrument. And like, that's step 1, right? Step 2 is let's figure out what instrument. Step 3 is let's figure it out together and how you want to play with it. And I think all of that is moving in the right direction.
Corey, before I talk about the serious note of that, I have to just say though, like when you told me that you don't play an instrument, like I would have bet $1,000 against that. Dude, you have such an incredible head of hair. Like how you're not in a band is probably one of the greater travesties of your life. I'm just going to throw it out there.
I'm more of a concert goer than a concert, activist. I would love to. It was one of those things, Josh, you know what I mean? And you got to make choices. And I just never got around to it, unfortunately. But maybe this is my opportunity.
There you go. Late bloomer.
Maybe we'll start our own band. I'll play the drums. She'll play the guitar, and I think it'll be fun.
Okay, so coming back to the serious side of this.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it is interesting to look at things through the eyes of a child.
Sure.
Right. And I think that that's such a great example of your daughter was just like, I just want to play an instrument. Right. And I think the analogy I'm drawing, sorry for just like the cheesy transition over here, but I think it's really applicable is I think we do that so much in our professional lives, Corey.
Yeah.
Right. Like we've been so trained as to why this won't work or why you won't be good at this or why you won't succeed or that there's only one way to solve the problem. And from the eyes of a child, they're just like, no, I'm just going to do it. Like I haven't learned the failure yet. So I'm unafraid to try something new. Yeah. And, one of the things I remember you and I were talking about when we met in person for the first time at the DBSI event for their Visionary Voices conference. We were talking about one of the things that I was trying to be a lot more, I guess, aware of is trying to show my kids how to do the thing the way I do it versus letting them try and figure it out. Yeah. And literally right before we met, I had this realization, my son was trying to build something and I went to go step in to show him how he was wrong.
Yeah.
And I caught myself in the moment and I just observed and he figured it out. And it was very different than how I would have figured it out, but he got there. And I was like, crap, that could have been a huge mistake. Like I could have just influenced his neural pathway and taught him, no, there's only one way to get to the answer.
Yeah, I think about that all the time because I am pretty analytical to a certain extent. And I was raised in the Northeast and we're not known for being like the nicest people. We kind of go away pretty headstrong. And I think that's slowly kind of breaking down, right? I think if we end up at the right place, it's okay, no matter how we got there. And I think it's a good reminder, of that in general. And, just to be fair, it's like they're doing things in a way that I never had to. Right. Mm-hmm. Like they're faced with all of this stuff that I didn't have social media growing up. Right. They come in and, the times they do watch TV, they have anything at their fingertips. Right. They can put on anything they want. I didn't have that option. It's like I have a handful of channels and I have to see what's on. Right. So
dude, I still remember holding the tinfoil bunny ears for my brother to flip the cheese while I'm trying to get.
It's very different. And I think it's a helpful reminder that even though I was 7 years old at one point, his life is totally different than mine, like in so many ways. So it's like, we just have to kind of guide them and get them there. a matter of how they solve it is kind of the end game. I just want you to solve it. I don't really care
Yeah.
how you do
Well, and again, that's why I say like, sorry for the cheesy transition to it, but I think it makes all the sense in the world is
Yeah.
I absolutely think that that's such a great analogy for what
Yeah.
community financial institutions are facing right now,
Yeah.
right? Like they're growing up in a whole new world with a whole new set of challenges. And if we continue to tell the next generation of community financial institutions, this is how things have always been done, this is how you have to continue to do it, it will not work anymore.
Yeah. The thing, Josh, the thing that we have that we talk about all the time with kind of our clients and people we're talking to is like, your biggest threat is doing nothing,
Hmm.
right? If you just kind of continue and you've been around for 125 years, you'll probably be around for another 125 years. You're not going to be the same size. You're not going to be as successful. You probably won't have the same levels of satisfaction. You might still be around, but it's not going to be the same, period, right? You have to just evolve. I think for every FI that's different, right? I want to open 10 new branches in a new state. I want to introduce, a completely online checking account for my members. It's different for everybody, but you have to take that step in a direction. You have to be able to determine what's coming next. And, some of that is understanding what people around you are doing, understand what your members, what your customers want, but it's also understanding like where you want to go as an institution, right? For most of the people that we talk to, they're community-based institutions, and that is like kind of their superpower. But,
Yeah.
as kind of that threat to a certain extent. So it's like, how do you build on that in a way that is just kind of making people's lives easier, right? Like finances are something you don't really want to think about too much. So it's like, what are we doing to put our members and our customers in a place where they can just kind of forget about us for a while and we're just taking care of what needs to be done?
Isn't that so funny though, Corey? Like I have to remind myself that sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think our entire industry does sometimes. Like sometimes I want to think that we are the freaking coolest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
And like the members, man, they just want to hang out with the credit union and they want to hang out in digital banking because it's the coolest app on there. It's not.
No.
Nobody wants to. Dude,
No.
if I never had to think about my finances again, I would be pleasantly surprised and happy. I would be tickled. And be like, great. I don't ever have to think about that again. Wonderful. I don't even need a financial institution. Great. Sorry. Like that's again the reality. People don't want to do this stuff. It's not exciting. It's not the place they want to be. And that's where I think it gets so interesting, right? Is like I was just at a credit union.
Yep.
And I was going around to some of their different branches and just meeting with some of their different teams, talking about the things that their members were talking about, right? And so I'm in the different branches and I'm in one of their smaller branches. And literally this guy comes in with his dog and is just chatting away and he's happy to be there, Corey.
Totally.
He wanted to be there. But I watched the interaction unfold. Never once from when he stepped in to when he left was there any conversation about his money, his finances, his accounts, their products and services. None of it. It was literally just because he liked the people in the branch. He was walking his dog by the branch to say hi.
I want to say hi.
Right. So when people argue like they want to come in, they do. They do want to come in because they want to talk to the people they like. They don't want to come in because they want to have to do something with their money. It's just a byproduct of life.
I mean, that's true in every capacity, right? Like you were saying in the intro, my wife works at a school. She's administrator there. And you have some parents who come into school every day and grab their kids, right? Like as they're walking through the halls, put them in the car, they get going. There's some parents that never leave the pickup line, right? There's some parents that never come for pickup and their kids take the bus. That doesn't mean that they're all not getting the same outcome from that institution, right? Their level of participation there is not predicated on whether or not they're happy or satisfied or they feel like the product has delivered. And in their case, it has. It's just some people want to come into the branch or come into school more. Some people don't. In the end, are you giving them the experience that they want in the way that they want? And I think that's one of the biggest struggles today, especially under like kind of the 45 and under crowd, right? Gen Z millennials. Like you and I are talking now, but, besides work, I don't like being on the phone that often, right? I'm sure you're the same way. It's true. It's like, how do you how do you serve my needs as a financial institution? Sometimes it's digital, sometimes it's through chat, and we'll talk about AI in a little bit. Got to be that communication to ensure that your people know you're there for you, no matter how you interact with them. And I think that kind of gets lost a little bit.
Well, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Corey. This is something I've brought up before because it's something that I struggle to understand at a global US-based community financial institution, but a global level there. I think about a lot of folks, and I don't want to, demographic or age base this, but a lot of folks, and in specific brackets, we really do love the things like shop local, right?
Sure.
My wife and I, we live in the outskirts of Portland. It's literally just this last week has really started opening up all the farms around me, the farmers markets. Dude, I'm stoked. I love to be able to go and get fresh produce from the farm a mile from my house and go feed that to my kids, then grab something at the grocery store. I'm going out of my way for certain elements that I want to shop local for. I want to support that farm next to me more than anything, just because I don't want them to sell out. And so I can keep looking at a farm instead of another row of houses.
Sure.
And then I'm going to come home from the farm and talk about supporting local and caring about the small guy. And there's going to be like 12 packages on my porch from Amazon.
Yeah.
And so I struggle with that, Corey. I'm like, how do I reconcile those two things? And how do I think about how that's also kind of the mind screw that's plaguing consumers with their banking needs, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things about my banking needs where I'm like, no, dude, like it's really important to me that there's a credit union branch near my house that I can go drive and I can go sit down because I really need to talk to somebody. And then there's a bunch of times where I just need to Amazon it for them. Like I just need to.
Let me ask you this. Would you still go to that local farm if their apples weren't any good?
No.
If all things are equal, if your experience, your product, your satisfaction is equal, most people would say they'd rather do that local. They'd rather do it at the community level. But the problem we have is that it's a perception issue. A community banking institution is not offering you the same level of tech, of advisement, of products as the big national banks. That's probably not true in all cases. But if you find that community option that has the pieces that serves you in the way that matters, you'll stick with that every time because that's what you would prefer. You'd rather prefer to support them than Citibank or Wells or someone else. But the quality and the experience still has to be there. Yeah, and like ordering from Amazon, if I want to get, let's call it, I need a new shirt and I know a certain brand that I like and I've worn it in the past and I can get it from Amazon. I don't have to worry about it. I know exactly what I'm getting, right? That's not necessarily true if I go into a local store that I've never really heard of. They're pretty cool. I want to support them. I like kind of their whole vibe, but I don't know if this quality is up to what I expected. I don't know what if it doesn't fit right? Can I return it? Amazon's a known entity in that place, right? How do FIs mirror that in a way that they are providing the experience and the consistency in a way that matches with what most people want? They want to go somewhere local and community-based because it matters to them.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you see that? Do you think the experience part has to match the locality part?
I agree. And I think, this is where it gets interesting for me, right? Because in the community FI space, that is arguably where they kill the game.
Yeah.
They crush it on the relationship and the experience side of things. But you kind of snuck something in there too that I think is a really important element to touch on, which is you have to know it exists and be educated about it too. And again, talking about something you just kind of like touched the tip of the spear on is AI.
Yeah.
I want to talk about one very specific thread of it and how it relates to this conversation. Here's where this gets actually, I think, really scary for community financial institutions, right? I'm going to say this probably a little bit more brash than I actually mean, but I want to get a reaction out of people. If you're a $500 million credit union, you basically have zero chance of globally impacting Claude's recommendation of your products and services if I, as a consumer, just go to Claude and say, hey, I've got some extra money sitting in my checking account that I don't need to touch for a while. What should I do with it? The odds of it saying ABC Credit Union down the street from you has a great CD right now. Here's how you open that CD with them. And then I just seamlessly dump into Claude and open that CD and put my money into it. The odds of that are slim to none. Being able to influence global GEO at that level is crazy expensive. It takes an astronomical amount of effort, right? And so even if I've got the great relationship with my credit union, but I'm just getting into a place where a lot of people are, where I'm just like, I need the convenience factor, I need the Amazon factor. I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and ask, what should I do with this money? And it recommends, well, Chime has a great CD right now. You should check it out, because Chime's got the influence.
They have the influence, they have the money, they have the time, they have the infrastructure to do that. And I think that has how they've prioritized it, right? So, we're a research firm, right? We go out, we talk to people, and that's all we do, right? We don't sell widgets, we don't sell gadgets, we sell kind of insights. We did this a couple months ago about AI discoverability, right? Basically, how many people are using Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT to find their next banking piece, right? And the national norm is about 12% go there directly. 12% of consumers go directly to a ChatGPT, a Gemini, a Claude option to start their process looking for their next banking, either home or product. Google has changed, right? A year ago, I would have told you invest a lot of time, a lot of energy into member feedback and customer feedback. Make sure you're getting Google reviews. Make sure you're tying it to the branch. Well, that's less and less important, because you go to Google, you type in something, and that AI box is on top giving you a summary of what they find, right? So the research we found, 12% go to AI. 40-ish% go to Google or another search engine. Add those together, you're at 52%, right? Because essentially it's AI driven, right? You're essentially 50% of people are driven by what the AI results have to do, right? Now, the number's huge, and it's going to get bigger, right?
Yeah.
It's only going to get bigger.
Yes.
Now, it's going to cannibalize itself, right? So, I think the ChatGPT AI piece is going to pull away from Google, right? There's still the other chunk of friends and family. That is not necessarily changed. We've been tracking this for, 10 different ways, 5 years. It's always around 30 to 40% of people. Ask people they know, right?
Yeah.
That's the immediate opportunity. Like the immediate community banking opportunity is make sure your members and customers are happy so that you come up in conversation, period. The AI piece is going to become more and more important, and you have to start now. Right.
Yeah.
Like to your point, it takes a lot of time, effort, money. And if you haven't started it now, you have to. Like truly. I mean, I have some more thoughts, but what's your experience with some people that you've spoken to about it?
What I find really fascinating about that, Corey, is, if you had asked, sorry, let me back up. Let me actually ask you.
Yeah.
Was that the first time you've done that survey?
We did it in November, and we did it again in March. So let's call it, a couple months later. And all the numbers ticked up.
Yeah.
But
if you had done it in November of 24, it would have been probably zero.
Yeah, zero.
Or pretty close, right?
It would have been
like
zero.
You think about when, man, I'm going to feel like an idiot. I wish I could recall this. But when did ChatGPT reach the level where the average person was like, I totally used ChatGPT today on my phone?
Probably a year ago, beginning 2025. End of 2024 is when people were kind of in the know, started it. I would say beginning of 2025 is when it became more common. Now it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And you can avoid it.
But that's what's crazy, man. It's like you think about if you had just run that survey 18 months ago, that number would have probably been close to zero. And what's wild is you think about like how long did it take to go from having no digital banking at all to having people log into their accounts and transfer money on their mobile phones, right? Like the adoption curve took forever.
Yeah.
And that's just not the same curve anymore.
Part of the, I wouldn't say struggle, I think it's more of a challenge, is, again, if you asked me 2 years ago, this wasn't on my radar. AI exists in some capacity, but I would have said focus on Google reviews, build up that organic, knowledge base, making sure that your consumers are sharing their experience elsewhere. That's still important to a certain extent. But the AI discoverability piece is going to be more and more important, right? It's just going to shift. Like my guess is if we run this research at the end of this year, it's now May. If we run this at the end of the year, that number is going to be closer to 20%. It's probably going to go up higher the following year. And, those traditional tactics are going to kind of have to go away. I said a few minutes ago, it's like if you do nothing, you'll probably survive. And that's still true.
Yeah.
Right. If you do nothing, you'll probably still be there, but you're not really going to grow. You're not really going to innovate. You're not really going to perhaps better the experience for your customers and members. And what we found in talking to our clients, but also in our own research, is like you can only control so much, right? You control your website, you control what's there, kind of the back end of the metadata to make sure it's being pulled up by AI, make sure it's formatted in the right way. But then there's a whole other piece of trust and verification. And Google especially is looking for kind of what are people saying about you outside of what you own?
Yeah.
Right. So like, what are people saying on message boards? What are people saying in local news outlets? Have there been kind of PR releases about what you're doing? Without kind of both sides of that, it's not going to work. Right. To your point, you kind of need somebody almost full time doing this. Right. Ironically, you need a human full time to make sure that the computers are finding you in the right way. But it's getting to that point. Get on it now, because you have to be able to control that perception, that reputation before it's made for you.
You said you had some other thoughts around this. I'm curious what they are.
Interestingly, the trust level is not that high. So what we found is while people are defaulting to AI for their first cut, they are going elsewhere to kind of get that verification on their own. Right.
Interesting.
So they're going to a traditional Google review. They're going to friends and family. They're looking for other external reviews to find out if that's true or not. Right. So, here's a good example. I like watches. I follow kind of like the industry and what's going on. And there's a great guy on YouTube who just bought his daughter. He's got a 7-year-old daughter, bought his daughter her first Casio digital watch. Right. And he was saying how he used Google Gemini to find the right watch. And she's a swimmer. And Gemini swore up and down, it was a $10 watch, right? Gemini swore up and down that this watch is waterproof, essentially. It's up to 100 meters, comes in the mail, and it's not, like at all. It says water resistant. She goes swimming, it fails, she's heartbroken because he just relied on AI, right? He didn't go read any of the reviews. He didn't get any feedback. He didn't watch any videos. He didn't talk to any influencers. It was just one guy buying a little cheap watch for his daughter, and it let him down, right? And his whole thing was like, I kind of do this for a living. I should have known better. But as good as AI is today, and it's probably going to get better, you still need that other source, right? You still need somebody else out there. And that's what we're seeing for a lot of consumers. Like they're always going another place before they actually hit buy. They're going to get another piece of information.
Corey, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. It's funny, as we actually were literally having this exact same conversation this morning internally.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed in a lot of consumers is that if they use AI once and it lets them down, they then have this pervasive perception that it's always wrong, it's always off, and a lot of times don't go back to it. And what's totally wild about this stuff is how well it improves. I'm not kidding, week over week.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I don't give myself any credit for this. It's because I work for our CEO, Siva, who is a total legit tech junkie, AI power user. I don't know if I would have been as early adopter as I am if it wasn't for him. When I first started using a lot of the tools, I was like, okay, it doesn't work here. Yeah. It doesn't do this. And now, Corey, I won't go into it too deep, but I'm a world-class idiot, dude. Especially I am not a true technologist. I can speak the speak. I work around the people, right? I've never coded in my life, Corey.
And you know what? You might not have to in the future if we're still going this rate. But
I built my own first app recently. No help from anyone. Dude, it's killer. It's so perfect for me.
Yeah.
The viability of it as an app to anyone other than me is probably 2 other people.
Yeah.
But who cares? I didn't have
Yes.
to invest a ton of time, resources, money to go build this custom app for myself. I literally just had a conversation with Claude, used Claude Code, built all of this stuff. I didn't even know, like your daughter, like just want to play an instrument. I was like,
Yeah.
Claude, I want to build an app that I don't even know where to start. And it was like, cool, let me break it down. Here's where we're going to start. Here's where we're going to go next. You're going to use this format of code because it's going to work better. I was like, cool, I don't even know what that means, but great. Right.
Yeah.
And going back to your point, like if at any point in that it had screwed up, what would that have done for me? I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that it didn't. It got to a point where I now have a completed product. I built this myself over the course of like doing it in bed over a week. It's crazy.
I think that's a great example of you, first of all, persevering to keep doing it, but second of all, trusting the process that it's going to get there. And, we're doing this research nationwide, but where it really matters is kind of like where you are, right? Obviously, your credit union can only recruit from a certain area, it has its own seg. So like the locality matters, but generally, Gen Z and baby boomers have the lowest trust in AI results. Baby boomers is kind of understandable, right? It's a little bit foreign, although, depending on maybe the age of parents or elderly relatives, they might be stuck to it a little bit more than you think. But the Gen Z group is more skeptical because they grew up with it.
Interesting.
Right. So, their level of immediate trust is much, much lower. They are going to be the group that asks the follow-up questions. They don't abandon AI. They ask the follow-up questions. Give me more information about where you found this. Give me another example. Provide more insights. They'll go a little bit deeper. And I think that's the piece that, again, getting back to the banking side, are you going to pass that kind of initial level, right? You getting brand awareness gets you into Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT. Is there enough information out there to tell them why your rewards checking account is the best one? Or why your community support lives up to your mission, for example? That group is going to be a little bit more discerning, right? They're going to be better because they're asking better questions and more questions. And I find that that's kind of nice, right? I actually like to hear that. And I think it's a reminder that, like, it's not just surface level. Like, it has to go a
Yeah.
little bit deeper.
Well, I think that opens up a whole nother element, which is how do you create differentiation in that world of unlimited information?
Yeah.
Right? Like if I go, because you also have to think like people think and meet
Yeah.
them where they are. And one of the things that I argue a lot about our industry is our industry, I think, gives people too much credit that
Yeah.
they understand financial products and services. And we think that like the member is going to go to ChatGPT and ask a very pointed question about a CD or something. They're probably not. They're just going to be
No.
like, what do I do? And it's
Yeah.
going to be as simple as that. Right. And so when they get results, the question is, how much deeper do they take that question? Because again, trying to do this on a global level, if I just go ask Claude, hey, I've got some extra money in my checking account that I got a bonus this year or whatever.
Sure.
Like, what could I do with it? Right. Well, what is the response that it comes back with? Is it going to say, go put it in the stock market? Is it going to say, put it in a CD at a credit union? What's it going to say? So influencing that for starters. But then two, let's just say it says a CD at a credit union, right? Then it's just going to go comb the earth and look for rates. And then literally, are we all just going to be competing on, global basis points? And if mine is, a 1/1000th of a percent lower than this other institution, Claude's going to recommend that one because it had access to do the math, look at it all and say, this is a better one. And so how do you actually create kind of niche banking where you can say, hey, look, I check mark the box. I have a CD that's got a 5% rate, just like everybody else has right now. Like
Sure.
I've got that if you need that. But I also have this thing that nobody else does, or I have this way of doing something that nobody else does. And I think that is how we have to start thinking differently about our industry to be more unique than just we're in your local community. We have the products and services you need, whether you know that we do or
Yes.
not. And
Yes.
we're here to serve you when you need us. That world is gone.
I think it's such a valuable question right? Because I would say 99% of the people listening to this are going to be at an institution that they have to stand out against their peers in a real significant way. And those peers are going to be, the top 10 banks in the country. What we've seen, ironically, is that when consumers have a problem, almost 50% of them, the first thing they do is actually pick up the phone. It's not chat. It's not email. It's pick up the phone first because you need an answer right away, right? So going back to your earlier point, have I been burned in the past, right? People have been burned in the past by, chatbots, right? That's not a reliable source for a lot of people because they haven't gone back, right? I have an issue with my direct deposit, my check bounced, whatever it may be. And I talked to the chat. I got the runaround. I didn't really get the answer I needed. I'm not going back to chat, right? I'm going to phone. One of the main drivers that we see in banking choice is ease of doing banking with, right? It's fees and rates, sure. But if I'm thinking about the average person, every year about 12% of people change their primary banking institution, okay? That's not really a lot in the great scheme of things, and a lot of people don't do it that often. But when they do, they don't really want to do it again, right? So your couple basis points are not going to make up for the fact that you have poor customer service, that you've closed some branches nearby me, that I can't deposit a check in my digital banking app, right? All of those pieces that are just kind of assumed, you have to tell people that, right? If you're a community banking institution, you are going up against the big national pieces. Why are you the better option? It's probably not going to be tech. It's probably not going to be access. What are you doing differently, right? Is it you have an incredibly innovative student loan product, right? Do you have a variable rate auto loan product that nobody else has? There's a client of ours who focuses on cannabis banking. That's something that, because of the national laws, it's very difficult to get that. That is their niche. They don't really advertise that. That's all word of mouth, right? But that's what they do really, really well. We have other credit union clients who are essentially going after payday loans, and they are saying, we are offering members super low cost, super small loans to kind of bridge them between those times that they really need us, right? Yeah. We're not looking to make a lot of money. We're not really, if we have to, make money at all. We're there because we're doing that for our members, right? Is Wells doing that? Is BMO doing that? Probably not, right? These are examples of things that smaller institutions are doing that others are just not. And you can own that, right? Like, it might not be for everybody. And I think that's kind of the key here. You cannot be everything to everybody. What do you do well? Where do you feel like locally you have a niche that you can expose, whether that be age, income, jobs, or just, location? And how do you fulfill that, right? How do you let people know that you do something nobody else does? Yeah. That's the most powerful thing in the industry, doing something nobody else does, right? Because there's not a lot of that. But coming up with something innovative, I think, is step one. But step two is communicating it, right? Making sure that, are you getting the message out there that you're a different option? Whatever that may be is up to you, but you have to be able to define that, right? I mean, how many people have you spoken to who say, why should I bank with you? And they might hesitate. They might not have an answer. Or they say, hey, we have a great rewards checking account. Cool. So do a lot of other options. Oh, we have online banking. Great. So do 97% of banks and credit unions, right? Give me something more. Like, what is it? Why should I bank with you? And if the answer is our people, that's not enough.
Yeah. Well, okay, Corey, this opens up a whole nother element of this, which is it's this combination of having some sort of niche product service offering mentality, whatever it may be. And I think that goes and dovetails really into the idea of personalization in banking too. Going back to what we talked about earlier of like, nobody wants to do banking. This is not something that we want to do or excited about. It's a chore. It's a chore. but I want it to be tailored to the chores that I need to do so it makes banking efficient, like make it easy to bank.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Use some names, and hopefully my father-in-law doesn't give me a talking to over this later. My father-in-law and I last weekend were having a conversation about this, and it was hilarious. I gave him a hard time afterwards because I was like, Dad, you know I work in this industry, and you knew you were planning on bringing this up to me, but after the fact, why didn't you talk to me before you did anything stupid? Yeah. So what he did, what was interesting to me, so my father-in-law is a really cool success story, I think. I look up to him a lot. He put himself through medical school in Guadalajara, Mexico, went from, having nothing as a kid to put himself through med school in Mexico, went through, residency, got into practice, built, and long story short, he ended up retiring as a partner in one of the largest gastroenterology clinics here in Oregon and was very successful. He retired a couple of years ago, and he was a Chase private client.
Sure.
He had his investments and now his retirement, right, with his investment banker, who was associated through Chase and Chase private client. His guy moved, and Dad was so tied to him.
Yeah.
He wanted to make his relationship with his investments and his retirement so easy that he moved with his advisor from Chase Private Client to Wells Fargo. And he is pissed. And Wells Fargo is just treating him like complete and utter garbage. And what he was lamenting to me over, Corey, was something that has been a long diatribe of mine, is this whole concept of personalization. Like, I argue it's not about showing my name in digital banking. It's not about like having a cooler menu or whatever, like a better background or a prettier UI, right? None of that matters when what happened to my father-in-law happens. He went to move money, and Wells Fargo told him his limit was $500, Corey. And he was like,
no, it's not.
No, it's not. And we're going to have some issues with that if that's how you're going to treat me.
Yeah.
So he calls Wells Fargo. Takes forever.
Yeah.
Finally gets to a person. This goes back to what you were just talking about, right?
Yep.
When somebody has a problem, what do they do? He picks up the phone.
Pick up the phone. Yep.
He finally gets to somebody at Wells Fargo. And Wells Fargo tells him, well, we haven't established enough history with you yet, so that's your limit. And he was like, no, this is my money. I need it to go to this. I need this to happen. What do I need to do? And you know what they told him to do, Corey? They told him to get his ass in the car and drive to a branch.
So it's such an opportunity for examples like that to be honed in on by community banking options whose entire mission and purpose is the opposite of that, right? Their whole mission is to serve you in a way that you hit your goals on the personal financial level, but we also hit our goals as an institution. And where I thought you were going with this was that he's still running a business and he wants to be kind of tied to his banker. That's what the data says is actually a great opportunity, right? For those people who have an assigned, for their small business, for those people who have an assigned banker, advisor, even branch manager, their satisfaction level is 90+%, right? Oh, wow. Huge satisfaction. Yeah. Only about half the small businesses actually have that. Right? So when you said he moved with them, I'm like, oh, great. That follows the trend. That makes sense. What they don't tell you is like when they switch institutions, the rules change. And, something that we found on the consumer side over and over is the idea of really advisement being more than just being responsive. It's like you have to bring something to the table. So we measure a couple different metrics on banking experience, right? I think today we're at 28 different levels of experience, right? Everything from good rates to good ATMs to, digital banking works for me. Typically, depends where you are, depends if you're talking about Gen Z or boomers, but typically, the number one most important thing for consumers is my data being safe, my identity, my data, my money, right? Makes a ton of sense. The satisfaction level on that is through the roof, right? Most people, unless they go through a massive fraud, are fine with it. The opposite side of that, the least important thing to people, according to them, is the idea of proactive recommendations. And what that means is you recommend what I should be doing. You help me understand what product makes the most sense. You guide me, right? That's the least important thing to them.
Wow.
The dissatisfaction level is huge. People don't want to be sold to.
Yeah.
Right? How do you bridge the idea of people needing that recommendation from you, them needing that relationship from you, but it not being seen as cross-sell, as it not being seen as just you checking the boxes to make sure you're asking about their next product? I mean, that's a piece that we see consistently as something they don't want, but they need, if that makes sense.
This is another one of the things I get pretty fired up about, Corey. I'm glad you brought this up because I go back to my own story of why I became a credit union nerd, right? I needed help and I was sold products.
Yeah.
But I was sold products by somebody who cared. They didn't pitch it as selling products. They said, here's how we're going to get you from where you are to where you want to be. The mechanism for that was I was sold products.
Sure.
Right. And so how do you bridge that gap? And I need to beat her up again. I have a person I've been trying to get on the podcast for forever. Terry, the CEO of Iron Workers Credit Union. And Corey, she's just a badass chick, dude. She's so brilliant and she's just so hungry to help people. And thankfully, I think since the last time I talked to her about this, she's gotten a little bit of technology to help with this, but she's a small credit union, seg-based for iron workers. Yeah. And she refers to it as like her boys, like her iron worker boys. She's like, my boys love their Harleys. She's like, and these guys, they make good money. And for kind of the blue collar space that they're in, they make good money. They typically, right, like to buy things like Harleys with that money. And she's one of the things that she used to do, Corey, is she would literally go through her monthly ACH reports and she would look for any payments specifically to like Harley Financial or to any of these lenders. And she'd go look up and then she'd run the math. And then she would personally pick up a phone, call her member and say, hey, Corey, I know you just bought this Harley. You're paying 24% interest on this thing. Your monthly payment on that Harley is $600 a month. Bring that over to me at the credit union. I'll give it to you at 6%. Your monthly payment is going to go down by whatever, $100 a month.
Yeah.
And she was telling me this once, Corey, and she's like, I've had these big, tough iron worker guys crying on the phone, telling I was just about to have to sell the Harley because I couldn't afford it. You just put it back into, I can keep my bike.
That is a proactive recommendation, right?
That's selling a product, but it's not selling a product.
You're selling a solution, right? And that sounds so salesy, and that's not what I mean, right? We're both kind of in the vendor space. That's not what I'm talking about. But the idea is like, how do I get from point A to point B? And maybe it is the right product. Maybe it's a different advisor. Maybe it's a different process that you go through. But that's an example of something 5 years ago. Maybe you set up like a pretty complex Excel macro to find that. Today, AI could be your friend in there, right? AI could be your friend from the banker's side to identify where are car payments going out, where are mortgages going out, where are other payments going out that we could potentially compete with on a regular basis. That is a proactive recommendation, right? That is putting your customers and members in a better financial space that they're happy, they're satisfied, they have flexibility, but importantly, you're bringing business into your institution, right? That's much easier to do today than it was a couple of years ago. That's such a good example because it's practical. I'm glad you brought that up because that is exactly what kind of the research is saying too. People don't want to be sold to, but they want to be helped.
Well, you know, I think too, going back to what we were talking about with just the world has changed too.
Yeah. There's
a whole new breed of competition that I think is also thinking very differently.
Yeah.
Like, look at what Chime is doing.
It's doing everything, right? And I don't mean that to sound glib. Like, you know, a few years ago, Chime had a checking account and debit card. They have more options now. They have kind of reward and premier checking accounts. They have something called Chime Prime, which in my mind is not like the best name, but essentially you are getting rewards for doing everyday transactions, right? For a lot of consumers, you are getting rewards for doing everyday transactions. That is a proactive recommendation, right? That is putting your customers and members in a better financial space that they're happy, they're satisfied, they have flexibility, but importantly, you're bringing business into your institution. If you're just throwing rewards at them for doing their everyday business, that's great, right? The downside of Chime, according to our research, but also do some AI searches and get the same thing, customer support is not great, right? They don't have that branch. It's all digital, right? For better or for worse. For a lot of customers, they kind of outgrow Chime. It's like, I need a relationship beyond that. Where I think there's a threat is that Chime, announced at the end of 2025, they're shifting their focus, right? They used to be focused on helping kind of the underbanked and helping those who, are in the lower financial status that need help, need access to banking. They've come out and saying, yeah, we're now looking at 200K households and above. We're going to offer services to them that we have not in the past. And that is going to come right at the heart of a lot of community banking competitors, because they do have the digital tools, right? They have it. It's really easy. Customer service isn't great. Breadth of product isn't great. Obviously, no branches. But can you start peeling off a couple percentage every year from traditional banks? It adds up over time. Like, what do they look like in 10 years? I think that's the big question. And Josh, you probably see it yourself. I mean, they're everywhere. Marketing-wise, advertising-wise, they're everywhere. We have friends, CPG, shout out to them, who do some pretty good research on the average marketing spend of banks and credit unions. If you're under 10 billion of assets, on average, you're spending 0.07% of assets on marketing, right? Chime is 4 to 5 times that percent of assets. So I'm not competing with them on kind of a fair basis, but what do you have, right? What do you have that you can rely on today in order to really carve out that future for tomorrow? I always go back to the idea that it's hard to switch banks. So let's make it really easy to give them everything they need now so that they're not looking around.
Well, and I would argue that's one of the things that has made the Chimes and the Venmos so successful, right? Is in all reality, they're a customer acquisition engine. Right? That's their primary focus. And so they're very, very deliberate about it.
Yeah.
To your point, you can see it in how they operate their P&L. Right? I was talking to one of the guys on my team, Alex Berman, and we were literally having a conversation at that same event I met you at about this. And I was asking Alex, like, how much does the relationship that a credit union offers matter and all of these different things? And Alex said, well, let me just caveat this first by saying, obviously, I'm the wrong one to ask because I work in this industry and I have a personal love for credit unions. Right? Like he said, even with all of that, he's like, I'll tell you, me and my demographic, we don't care. He's like, I don't care. He's like, I could not care less. He's like, that is not a differentiator for me. And I pushed him on it. And we started to have a fun little argument about it. And I said, Alex, is it just because your life is really simple right now? And because everything just kind of works? And I said, so you're just looking for your most efficient path to do the things that you need to do? And he goes, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Yes, totally. Yeah. Right. And I said, but Alex, when you and Colleen have your first kid, when you look to go buy your first house, when you start thinking about all of the different things that like come with the complexities of a big kid life, is that going to matter more?
He is a big kid. I've met him.
Is that going to matter more? And he said, yeah, totally. I said, so does your generation think this way? And I'd love to know if you have any survey data or anything on this. But I said, Alex, does your generation realize that, let's say that I only go to the credit union when I need someone, when I need the relationship, when I need all of that, and then I'm starting to build from there? Do they not realize that if I just started today when I don't actually need them, when the relationship doesn't matter, but I start there and I build it there, that when I get to the points in my life where those things are going to matter more, I'm actually going to be in a better position? And he was like, no, we don't think like that, man.
No. And I mean, I know from personal experience, I didn't think like that either. But, the research says the same thing. If you're thinking about an opportunity, using Chime as an example, right? It's very attractive, right? You have a certain amount of direct deposits, you get 5% back on everything you spend. Cool. Like, that's great. That's free money. Is that going to help you with those other pieces that you're referencing? No. Right. Something that we have found for a lot of institutions to think about is the idea of a youth account. And, the youth account today, I think, is kind of interesting because in our research that we have this idea of vulnerability of consumers who are not happy where they are. They haven't made a switch yet, but they're not happy. They're
Okay.
dissatisfied. They're looking for new primary. Share of wallet is falling, right? Pretty much everywhere. Millennials are leading that group, right? So 27 to 42 generally, right?
Okay.
That's also the group that has young kids,
Mhm.
right? So is there a real opportunity to draw in not only the millennials, but their future access to their kids? Yes, there is. The research that we've done is if your parents or guardians have opened a youth account for you, about 25% of those kids, now adults, are at that institution forever.
Hmm.
So if you think about like I'm a credit union, I'm a small community bank, 1/4 of all the youth accounts I'm going to open, they're going to be a lifetime member or customer. Those are pretty good numbers. It's pretty good odds. They're not that attractive today, not high balances today. But is that a better way to get them in before Chime grabs them, before Venmo gets them, before Cash App gets them? Probably, right? And, there's a lot of options out there, but having an attractive youth account with the right controls is something that we've seen on the research side that could pay dividends later on, right?
Yeah.
You grab them before they are pulled to one of the digital only options, because once they're there, it's harder to get them out.
I'd love your take on this, Corey. I'd like to think that you and I think pretty similarly in this regard, right? But like if somebody's willing to do something for my kids, like they skyrocket in points in my, and I was having this conversation with a friend recently and we were talking about, bear with me, I'm going to have a little fun with this analogy, but we were talking about, so I don't know if you get this, but we get this all the time in our neighborhood. These guys come through door to door to sell like pest control services.
Okay.
And we went through a phase, Corey, where I'm not kidding. I got about one a day. I mean, it got obnoxious. So
Now, I have to ask, are you living near a dump that there are so many pests that you cannot go anywhere else? Like,
no, that's what's funny is that I know it's like we don't even have a really bad problem with it. Like, I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
I think it was just we moved into this house almost exactly 10 years ago now.
Okay.
And when we moved out here, it was us and 3 other houses. My neighbor out this window was a blueberry farm, right? There was nothing.
Yeah.
Since then, now there's 6,000 homes here. It's mind boggling, like how much has changed my area. So I think it was just this influx of houses and they were like, oh, new opportunity, new houses that may not have bug treatment services. Let's go sell them. And the whole joke, a buddy and I were talking about like sales strategies and things like this.
Yeah, sure.
And somehow I made the joke where I was like, all of these guys come and they all have a similar pitch. Like, we're going to treat your bugs. I treated your neighbor's house and I have a simple monthly service fee and I'm going to be $5 cheaper than the guy that came here 10 minutes ago. Like nobody has really any differentiation whatsoever. If one of those guys had come to me and said, hey, look, man, I got the same bug services as everybody else. I'm going to charge you the same as everybody else. But every single month, I'll take 5% of your fee. I'll put it into a college savings fund for your kids. I'd have been like, done, baby. Where do I sign? You're here to help my kids? Done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sold. Send me the contract. Right. And the joke was, like, I'm going to be motivated as a parent who really, really cares about my kids' future. Yeah. If somebody says, I don't care about you, but I'll take care of your kids, I'm good, man.
That would work on me. When I saw you out in Arizona, we tacked on kind of a family trip to that trip. And we actually went to a spring training game. We went to the San Francisco Giants spring training game. They play downtown Scottsdale. I grew up, I'm a Red Sox fan. My wife grew up a Yankees fan. I have no connection whatsoever to the Giants, right? Go to the game, beautiful night, and game started at like 4:00. So it was perfect. You got 2 young kids, go to the game, come home, go to bed in real time.
Yeah.
About the 6th inning, they start having these ushers come around and they say, hey, like they call us out. It's like, hey, just a reminder, like come down to the third baseline around the 8th inning so the kids can run the bases. And their eyes lit up, right?
Oh.
The end of the game, they let every kid kind of under the age of 12, run around the bases and come into home base, right? Obviously, it's the first time they've ever been on like a professional baseball field. They're huge Giants fans now, right? Now they have this like affinity towards them that they would never have otherwise because they've had this experience that they would never have anywhere else, right? Is that a stretch to talk about banking? Sure. But I think it's reasonable to say like experiences and differentiation matter to people,
Yeah.
right? Being able to support other people kind of in your universe in a way that is like going to leave a lasting impression is way more important than a couple extra bucks in a CD or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's just a really cool way to remind yourself of what really matters, right?
Yeah.
Experiences and memories and like all of that is so cool and lasting that now they have this really strong affinity to the San Francisco Giants and we live in New
Yeah.
York. So it's kind of funny.
That's cool and funny. I was having this conversation last night with my best friend. Came over for dinner. Long story short, my buddy and I are big car guys. We
Yeah.
met through cars like 25 years ago. We've been racing cars together for 25 years. My son, who's now 5, obviously through osmosis, has kind of gotten into cars are cool.
Yeah.
I like going to see him races. He likes race cars, all of this stuff. Right. But he doesn't have an affinity for anything. He just kind of like goes with the flow. He just likes the concept of loud cars racing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So last year, and what we were talking about last night was planning this year's trip. So last year, my buddy and I took my son on a boys' trip. We flew into Chicago and we drove up into Wisconsin and went to the famous Road America racetrack for the IMSA races. Right. And I remember when we were planning this trip and we were looking at different tracks because IMSA goes all over the country. Right. We were like, what venue do we take him to? We were looking at different tracks. And you know what sold me on Road America, Corey, was right on their homepage, right off the bat, they immediately talk about kids. And they talk about how anyone 16 and under is free.
Yeah. It's so great.
And they were like, we want to build up the next generation of gearheads and kids in racing and all of this stuff. And I was like, done. I'm sold. Let's go. So we go out there. So that sold me as the parent, right? Then my son now has this crazy affinity for AO racing and this team
Rexy.
because of Rexy.
I
Rexy is one of like credit union, community bank friends. Go look this up. I don't care if you're not into race cars. Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Phenomenal marketing strategy. Absolutely brilliant. I am not kidding. There will be textbooks written about this company and what they have done. It is that impressive. They've done this whole livery design on this race car around a T-Rex.
Yeah.
And everything that they do, it's all geared towards the kids. Right? They couldn't care less about me as an adult, which is the total polar opposite of every other racing team. We already have our biases. We already have our teams. AO was like, no, we're going for the kids. And everywhere we went at Road America, Corey, every single kid was wearing Rexy gear. Dude, I probably spent $300 on Rexy gear for my kid. And it's all Jack talks about. And he doesn't want to go to races anymore. He doesn't want to go to IMSA anymore. He wants to go watch Rexy. That's what he says, right? He is now a lifelong AO racing fan. Kid's done for. And so by osmosis, now I am too.
So funny story, 2 years ago, my son and I went up to Lime Rock in upstate.
Oh, yeah.
Connecticut, and they've since moved in from Lime Rock. They'll probably come back. And we knew nothing going in. We're F1 fans. We don't follow IMSA whatsoever, right? So we go up and you get to walk through the pit lane. And all the cars, like, you know, we went on when they're doing some practices, so they're lined up. And of course, Rexy's right there. This cool green Porsche 911 with teeth and big eyes and arms. We walked out with a t-shirt. And I'm like scrubbing YouTube to try to find these strange feeds of races all over the country that I've never heard of that has Rexy on it, right? Because that's like what we're doing now. And I cannot share that sentiment more. That's like, it's just really geared towards the audience that you want, right? You know, at the time, my son was 5. He still wears the t-shirt. And it's just like this cool thing that he's into that like not a lot of other kids are into, but it's such a great way to identify your current and future fan base by just opening it up, being a little bit more simple, being a little more welcoming. They're not the fastest. They're not the best. They're just kind of there, but they have a cool look. And the guys who drive it are awesome. And the owners are awesome. And it's a whole thing that has really worked for them.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of lessons there. like when you're growing a business, right? Sometimes you don't have to be the best of the best, but are you likable? Is it fun? Is it interesting? I think some of that comes down, more often than you think.
Well, so here, for those of you that are watching and can actually see the video, here you go. So this is how, so here's the lime
Yeah.
green Rexy Porsche. They even got a Lego contract and have their own Lego car now. And
It's genius.
it's such a brilliant, especially if you are in senior leadership or marketing at a credit union or community bank. I think this is a phenomenal case study. And this ties back to what Corey and I were just talking about, right? Like huge opportunity with the next generation. And literally what a lot of racing has realized is that the world is moving to electric cars, and the car racing scene as it was is changing. And just like, I bet you if you were to run the data on your institution, what would happen if every single one of your account holders over the age of 65 simply died tomorrow and all of their assets left with them? What
Yeah.
would you be left with? And how would you backfill that? That's what racing is going through. They're like, hey, look, if all of the people that traditionally came all of a sudden didn't exist anymore, which is happening,
Yes.
how are we going to get the next generation? And that's exactly what AO Racing has decided to tackle.
Yeah.
And they've got their whole new next set of loyal fan base that's going to pay their bills. And I think that's a great example for our institutions to say, okay, how can we stand out? How can we be different? How can we capture the next generation? Like, how do we take this stuff really serious, but how do we still have some fun with it?
Yeah, totally. And I think we're, for lack of a better term, on kind of like the marketing industry, right? How do you get your name out there when you're competing with the biggest brands in the world, right? You're competing with Chase, you're competing with Wells, you're competing with, on the East Coast, M&T. Like they have football stadiums named after them, right?
Yeah.
Millions of dollars. What do you have? You don't have that, but can you do something really cool? Can you do something really different? Can you do something that really just captures their awareness, right? That's the goal, right? The reason that Coca-Cola still sponsors ads at the Super Bowl is not that nobody knows what Coca-Cola is. It's that people don't forget what Coca-Cola is, right? And I think that's an important distinction. For a lot of kind of smaller community banks, you might have this identity that you've been around forever, and that's okay to a certain extent, but how are you going to be there in the future? And I think that's that message that we haven't gotten to quite yet for a lot of places. There are a couple of exceptions to the rule, of course, but for most that we see, it's kind of business as usual.
Yeah. I think we always kind of come to this conclusion. That's why I have so much fun doing this podcast is there's a lot of excitement in the challenge because I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing about it is that the opportunity exists for community financial institutions, and them winning is a good thing. This is a good thing for the American consumer. This is a good thing for our communities when you win.
Totally.
When your products and services get into the hands of my friends, my family, my neighbors, my community, right? Yeah. So this is why people like you and I get really excited over this stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Corey, I could easily talk to you for days on end, but at some point I got to let you go.
Speaking of, I got to grab the kids at some point this afternoon.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It's absolutely always a pleasure to talk to you. I feel like I always walk away with some good nugget, and the research you guys are doing is really, really valuable stuff. So I got two final questions for you, good sir. So where do you go to get information? How are you staying up to date?
Yeah, you know what? So we're lucky enough to have a partnership with Financial Brand, and you know what? We write interesting stuff and they carry it. We're not sponsors. We're supporters of getting more information out there. The Financial Brand for us is a good source to see what's going on in the industry. I would say on a really practical level, go to a couple events all over the country. If you're up by you, Josh, go to Max, go to the credit union event out west. If you're up by me, go to NEFMA, New England Financial Marketers. It's an incredible group. Go to physical places and meet other people because they're going to be talking about stuff that you probably have experienced or are thinking about that they might have solved. That's step one. But bigger, it's ironic to say LinkedIn is actually really valuable. It's a valuable place to find smart people, to find people that could probably solve some of your problems that Josh and I can't. There's really interesting follows. There's good people there that you can connect with and build relationships with that may help you at your current role or help you get another role or whatever it may be, but be involved in that. That's easier said than done, right? It's hard to start connecting with people you don't know. It's hard to start talking to somebody at a conference when you're tired and it's 3:30 in the afternoon and you just want to go home. Do it. Make those connections in person because they do last. And that's how you kind of build that connection base on LinkedIn. And that's how you get a lot of cool information, right? Yeah. You find out about that merger before it happens. You find out about a new digital service before it's really announced because you're connected to the right people. Yeah. Don't be afraid to get out there a little bit.
It's funny that you mentioned financial brand. It's not out yet, but the episode that's going to air before this one is with Jeffrey Pilcher, the CEO. Well, I kept begging him to be on the podcast because I kept telling him every time I saw him, I was like, I asked this question at the end of every episode, and you know what the number one most common answer is? Financial brand. And I was like, dude, you got to come tell your story. So finally got him.
I mean, it's like there's a lot of them out there. We just happen to it's a nice way to kind of catch up in the morning. I'm East Coast, so kind of everything's up there. I just see what's going on. Some stuff is interesting, some stuff isn't. Some stuff is a sponsorship, some stuff isn't. You kind of have to weed through it, but I think it gives you a really big picture of what's going on generally. And I think that's kind of what you want. But building that organic network is going to pay dividends long term in terms of just being out there and knowing the right people.
Well, speaking of that, if people want to connect with you, or if they want to get access to some of the research that you and your group at Rivel are doing, where and how can they do that?
So you can message me directly on LinkedIn or Rivel Banking Research. There are a couple good articles up there you can download. We are putting out new articles every month on financial brand that do not really have anything to do with the business we do. So we help FIs with brand benchmarking, understand really local competitors and what's going on around them. Financial brand, we're talking about big stuff. We're talking about business relationships. We're talking about AI adoptability. We're talking about really the importance of, fees versus rates or whatever it may be. But we're out there. We're always researching. We are trying to get you motivated about proactive recommendation in the most reasonable way that we can. If you just have some questions and you are looking for some answers or just want to kind of pick the brain of some people who live and breathe this all the time, shoot us a message. Be happy to talk.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the research that you guys are doing because it helps us all as an industry be able to make data-driven analytical decisions, right? And be able to be a little bit more confident to have fun because it's backed by data. So you guys are doing cool stuff, Corey.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming to being a guest on the Digital Banking Podcast.
This is awesome. Hopefully I'll come back before number 300.
Dude, I mean, it's crazy to think that we've done as many episodes as we have. If you'd asked me that this is what I'd be doing just a couple of years ago.
You and me both. So, I mean, I was a political science major in college, so I didn't think I'd end up here, but
here we are.
Life's funny that way.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for coming to be a guest, Corey.
All right, Josh, appreciate it a lot.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Banking Podcast, powered by Typhone. Find more episodes on digitalbankingpodcast.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.